Almost everything in the stock market and other asset markets is going crazy and has been going up in the last week after the election. One of the biggest jumps was by small cap stocks and ETFs. Donald Trump's victory sent stocks with small market capitalizations to new highs finally. There's more room for them to rally. In this video, I'm going to explain why many analysts are expecting crazy returns in the small cap sector. I'll highlight a couple of my favorite small cap ETFs, and I'll give you both the pros and cons of small cap investing and how to invest in your portfolio if you choose to add them in. My name is Nolan Govea. My students call me Professor G, and I made this channel to make investing simplified. Now, this clip that I watched last week was incredibly fascinating, and it got me started on my research into why I believe that small cap might actually be the answer in the next year or two. The numbers he lists here are very exciting.
Join us now on the markets, Tom Lee, Head of Research at Fundstrat Global Advisors, Chief Investment Officer at Fundstrat Capital. The list goes on, and he's a CNBC contributor presidency. So 1,500 points out of the gate. More to come, or are we're already there?
I think we need to respect this move. I mean, there was a tremendous rally post-election, and it continued yesterday. I think it really does reflect a lot of money was taken out of the market because of the uncertainty around the election. And now we know that because of policy changes and animal spirits, that this is really going to benefit things like Bitcoin and small caps and regional banks and financials. So I do think there's still a lot of upside. I mean, small caps trade at 10 times median forward earnings. I mean, that's a...
So what do you think that should be, 12 times? I mean, what's the opportunity set in your mind?
Well, since 1987, small caps traded on a median PE basis at a premium to the S&P. The S&P is at 17 times. So I think small caps could, in the next couple years, outperform by more than 100%.
100%? That's just nuts. So basically, if the S&P 500 returns 10%, then they're saying that small cap ETFs are going to return 20%. I'll definitely take that. So why is he so bullish? And it's not just him. Do a little bit of research on what Trump's new policies are going to bring and how favorable that's going to be for small cap, and you'll see why too. Trump's economic platform appears to favor small cap companies thanks to its focus on tax cuts, deregulation, and protective tariffs. This environment has already sparked a 31% jump in the Russell 2000 index since the election, signaling strong investor confidence. The positive for small caps is that they tend to pay the higher rates of corporation tax, so any cuts will be enjoyed the most by them. As an asset class, they also tend to have more domestic revenue exposure, and so in light of the probable increase in tariffs, this will likely help their competitiveness. Small cap companies need to borrow at cheaper prices, and then easing the taxes that Trump's proposing is just going to be so big specifically for these smaller companies that need as much air to breathe as possible. That little bit, that little couple of percentages that they don't have to pay in taxes may be the difference between make or break and can help them be able to do a bunch of research and development, hire new people, use new technology, and grow like crazy, which helps us profit the most in the stock market. So I'm going to give you a couple of really good, solid, small cap ETFs, and some of them I've talked about on this channel before, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of them, and then I'm going to go a little deeper into one of them that I think is actually going pretty crazy and might be the one for the next 2 or 3 years. So some really solid small cap ETFs are IWM, which is the iShares Russell 2000 ETF, SCHA, which is the Schwab US Small Cap ETF, VBR, which is the Vanguard Small Cap Value ETF, AVUV, which is the Avantis US Small Cap Value ETF, and then XSMO, which is the Invesco S&P Small Cap Momentum ETF. Now, this is the one that I've been researching for a little bit of time here, and I actually did a video on some other momentum style ETFs a little while ago, and these style ETFs are super intriguing. But this one in particular might be my favorite small cap ETF, so I'd highly recommend that you research this one. And if you have one that you like a bunch, if you could help us out, throw it down in the comment section down below. But anyway, about XSMO. This ETF is based on the S&P Small Cap 600 Momentum Index. The index is composed of 120 securities in the S&P Small Cap 600 Index having the highest momentum scores, calculated pursuant to the index methodology, which are computed by measuring the upward price movements of each security as compared to other eligible stocks within the S&P Small Cap 600 index. So basically what this one is doing is it's making it so that whatever the ones that are the strongest, the ones that have the most upward momentum but also have the most chance to have the upward momentum, that's what's being put into this ETF. And so basically they're just going in and cutting all the fat, all the ones that are probably okay companies but just don't have as much possibility to go up. They're cutting those out and they're just keeping the momentum style companies, which is only going to help your portfolio. To put this in better perspective, the Russell 2000 is one of the best small cap indexes, and a bunch of ETFs track this index, and that's a very solid place to have your small cap exposure. But looking at IWM, which tracks the Russell 2000, IWM year to date is up 17.5%, which is great. But if we look at that momentum ETF, that XSMO year to date is up 27.3%. That's almost double, at 10% higher in the same exact amount of time. I'll definitely be putting out another video down the road with XSMO and maybe some of those other small cap ETFs that you recommend down in the comment section. Now looking at this next short clip, Tom Lee explains why the next 4 years under Trump is going to be even stronger than his first 4 years, and just how good this could be for stocks overall.
I mean, I think part of the reason investors are getting somewhat optimistic is that President Trump is entering office again, but this time with a lot more knowledge of how to build a cabinet and a team. And so in some ways, this would end up being more market friendly. And I think that's why investors are becoming optimistic. I mean, I kind of agree with the idea that there are animal spirits growing.
And then here's his prediction on where the S&P 500 is going to be, the actual price point that he believes it's going to be by the end of this year and next year in 2025. And then after this, I'm going to explain exactly how to invest in small caps in your portfolio and in what percentages.
So what about 2025? So 5 to 10% more would put us well above.
Yeah, more than 6,000 before year end. I think at least for the foreseeable future.
No recession.
No recession.
And people want you to answer when I ask you a question. So what do you say? 100 on the S&P?
I think well past like 6,700.
No.
Sometime next year.
6,700?
Yeah, sometime next year, because
that's another 20%, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe 10, 15. Yeah, because margin debt hasn't really risen in the last 4 months. And the stock market's up. So we know investors haven't been adding risk. And now we have earnings visibility and we have a continued dovish Fed, and then this election's behind us. So multiple tailwinds exist.
You're pretty bullish.
I think I'm pretty positive on the US and fundamentals, yes.
Okay, good.
So obviously that's incredibly bullish or positive for the market moving forward. And I do tend to agree, except for I believe that we're going to see a minor correction sometime at the beginning or middle of 2025. But I do think long term, this is definitely favorable information. Now with small cap investing, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and it's not just 100% shoe-in that small cap does amazing just because Trump is in office. Investors see potential gains in small cap stocks, but must tread carefully amid soaring valuation and inflation risks. Trump's tariffs and economic measures might benefit these companies now, yet the burden of higher debt could become more pronounced if borrowing costs rise with interest rates. Focusing on firms with strong balance sheets is crucial to mitigate risks. While the Russell 2000's recent surge is impressive, it underscores the delicate balance small caps must maintain in an evolving economic landscape. Rising treasury yields highlight market expectations of fewer Fed rate cuts, potentially squeezing profit margins. This scenario puts a premium on selecting quality stocks with sustainable earnings and manageable debt levels in this volatile environment. So obviously that's talking a little bit more if you're picking the actual individual small cap stock, like individual company. That's very hard to do, yet there can be a way that you make a lot of money because those things could jump like 400%, but those are the ones that definitely can go bankrupt at any point too, so it's incredibly volatile. I'd stick to ETF investing, the small cap ETFs like I talked about before. So let's talk about what percentage we're looking at in your portfolio. So first of all, if you're investing in the 3-category portfolio that I always talk about, which would be low volatility or dividend or cash flow style, and then there's the foundational or the market average like the S&P 500 style, and then the higher risk, possible high reward style. If you're investing in that, small cap definitely goes more in the growth section because just in general, a small cap company is very, very small and it's trying to increase its market share, so grow into become a mid cap and then large cap. So in essence, the small cap itself is just a growth style ETF. Now, I would highly recommend that it's not a core position in your portfolio. So maybe something like 5 to 10% in your portfolio. And the way that it would work is if you're allocating 30% or so of your portfolio to growth, and you like something like SCHG, then I would go something like 20 to 25% in SCHG and maybe 5 to 10% in something like XSMO. I do believe that in the next year to 3 years or so, this is going to be favorable for small cap companies and for small cap ETFs. I think that Trump's policies overall will be better for that and that environment for them to thrive in. So I do see some growth there. I don't know if I necessarily think that they're going to do 100% better than the S&P 500, but I do think small cap has a chance over the next year or two to really crush it. The issue I have with small cap, specifically ETF investing, is that it's a little bit more of a short-term outlook, and I like to do more buy and hold style investing. I like to figure out a couple of solid ETFs and just buy and let my money just grow and compound interest over the next years, many, many years. And the thing with small cap companies and small cap ETFs in general is they'll do well for a little bit, but if you think about what's happening in the index, the small cap companies, if they're doing well, that means they're growing, which means eventually they're not going to be small cap anymore. They're going to be mid cap. And at that point, if you're investing in a small cap ETF, now that company leaves the ETF and goes to the mid cap one, but you're investing in the small cap one. So that means that there's kind of a ceiling to when your investments might actually leave and it just may not do as well there. For the time being, you might get some of that appreciation and growth, which is why I say in the next year to 3 years, but it's just not something that I would hold in my portfolio forever because once those companies grow, you now have to start the cycle all over again. And we won't know what type of policies are going to be favorable or not favorable in the next 4 years. So anyway, just be a little bit more active if you are going to be investing in a small cap ETF and very active if you're going to be in small cap companies because you have to know when to sell. Watch either of these 2 videos to keep you going strong in your investing journey and make sure to keep investing simplified.